Graphs can be used to visually represent data or information, help organize, and show individual statistics. Statistics are simply summaries of information or data, and useful for a number of fields. But like most things in numeracy, there are rules. These rules allow us to present information accurately and also help us read graphs properly. So how do you read graphs? It's really a systematic process, and while following all the steps are cumbersome and seems longer, following these steps ensures that you can read a graph properly and is really actually quicker. In order to describe graphs, 1. Read the title. In our case here, sales for a particular year from January to December. Second, what is represented on the axis? Always start by defining the x and the y axis. The x-axis runs horizontally and represents the independent variable, what is manipulated or chosen, example time, where you are measuring something over time. What is represented on the y-axis? The y-axis runs vertically and represents the dependent variable. Think of this as the variable that something depends on, example, sales. What are the units of measurements on the axis? Make sure you know what the units mean and what is the scale. In our case, the x-axis is time in months and the y-axis is sales in millions of rands. The next aspect is to look at the origin. Has it been manipulated that it does not begin at 00, 0? In our case, the answer is no. This indicates that it has been manipulated. While there is nothing wrong with manipulating the origin, the rule is that it must be shown. How do you show a manipulation? The use of what I call a squiggly line. The final step is to look at symbols or legends. While our example did not have one, the example here indicates where we have product A represented by a solid line and product B represented by a dashed line. While knowing how to read graphs is important, knowing how to construct them is just as important. Thus we begin with an understanding of the types of graphs. Graphs, when used appropriately, indicate to the reader the type of data or information you've analyzed. A bar graph, which has vertical bars to represent the data values of a categorical data. The horizontal axis or x-axis has the category, for example, male or female. The vertical axis or y-axis has the frequency, that is, how many times the categorical variable is represented in the sample. Here's an example of a bar graph. On the x-axis you have the categories of pets, and on the y-axis the number of people that own each type of pet. A pie chart could have further been used when you have categories and frequency. Histogram is a graph depicting frequencies and distribution of a continuous variable, such as salary or age, which are simply quantitative variables. Unlike a bar graph, no gaps. Because you're representing continuous data, gaps in a histogram reflect no frequency. Line graphs. Line graphs are a graph that relies on the drawing of one or more lines connecting data points. The key to a line graph is the understanding that it is appropriate when there are changes over time. Line graphs are appropriate when both the x-axis and y-axis are continuous data. Although bar graphs can be used, line graphs are better at comparing changes over time. The different types of graphs we have been through are the most common. Always remember the rule for reading and presenting graphs.